A determined old farmer clung to his grandfather's modest airstrip, tending the cracked soil with weathered hands while debt threatened to crush him. Then, out of a raging storm, a massive C-17 military transport dared the impossible, landing on his private field. Within hours, uniformed officials descended, and by sunrise, everything would change. Hey everyone, welcome back to Not Just the Stories. Let's dive in. Tom Anderson swung himself onto his rusted old tractor, just as soft pink light crept into the Kentucky sky. At 62, his joints groaned with every movement, but the land needed him. The eastern field drew his eye, where a worn dirt airstrip sliced straight through his wilting soybean crop. Wasting good soil, his neighbor Jenkins had scoffed just last week. No corporate farm keeps an airstrip. That's why they're thriving, while you're drowning in debt. Tom had tuned him out then, and he did again now as the engine rumbled to life. That airstrip hadn't brought in a dime in decades, but 3 generations of Anderson men had kept it alive. Built by his grandfather during World War II for Civil Air Patrol, maintained by his father through the Cold War, now it was Tom's burden. Unpaid bills lay scattered on his kitchen table like vultures. Each month, more local farms fell to Heartland Agricultural Industries, the giant that had already consumed the Miller place and the Johnson land nearby. They'd made Tom an offer, too, on one condition: the old airstrip had to go. Some things are worth more than cash, Tom mumbled to Scout, his graying border collie riding shotgun on the tractor. The dog's cloudy eyes hinted he understood. His phone vibrated. Billy Watson, the airport manager 30 miles north. Morning. Billy, Tom answered. Storm rolling in tonight, Tom. Batten everything down. Appreciate the warning. The strip's clear if someone needs it. Billy chuckled. Still offering that? Most pilots don't even know that runway exists anymore. It's off the modern charts. Granddad always said, you prepare most when you least expect to need it. Well, this storm's no joke. Be careful. Tom spent the rest of the day tending the property, giving the runway extra attention. He cleared a fallen branch and packed gravel into a forming pothole near the far end. It wasn't much, 3,200 feet of hardened dirt and stone. But he kept it like new, even without visitors for months. The sun dipped behind churning clouds. Wind stirred the trees as Tom locked down his tools and trudged toward the farmhouse. Scout whimpered as thunder rolled closer. Just another storm, Tom reassured him. But deep down, something felt off. The walls moaned under the wind's assault as he stirred dinner. The shrill ring of the landline broke the tension. Hardly anyone called it anymore. Anderson Farm. Mr. Anderson, came a crisp, commanding voice. This is Colonel James Mitchell with the Air National Guard. Do you maintain a private airstrip on your land? Tom straightened. Yes, sir. Been operational since 1943. What's its condition and length? Roughly 3,200 feet. Dirt and gravel. Solid shape, but the rain's coming down hard. Why? Someone need an emergency set-down? A pause. Yes. A C-17 Globemaster is transporting urgent medical gear for Lexington Memorial. Primary and alternate airports are downed. Tom's blood ran cold. A C-DESA seat? That's insane. They need twice my length. Concrete, not gravel. Understood. But the pilot requested your coordinates. Who's flying? Tom demanded. Captain David Keller. The name struck Tom like a blow. David. The kid who pedaled 10 miles just to watch planes land. The kid Tom had trained in his old Cessna. The one he'd written a recommendation letter for. David knows this is suicide, Tom whispered. This strip can't take that kind of weight. Captain Keller believes otherwise, sir. His words were, Tom Anderson's strip will work. I learned to fly there. Rain battered the window. What David suggested wasn't just bold, it was reckless. If he crashes here, people could die, Tom warned. And if those supplies don't get through, more people will, the colonel said. Captain Keller's decision stands. He just needs your help. Can you light the runway? Tom's eyes shut. 20 years gone since he last saw David. 20 years since he promised a dying mother her son would have a future. "I'll light it," he said at last. "But tell David, if he wrecks my granddad's runway, I won't forgive him." The wind howled louder as Tom fought it, hauling LED markers from the barn. Scout watched from the porch as he pounded stakes into the sodden earth. He never imagined these lights would guide a military transport. By the time he was done, soaked to the bone despite his raincoat, he returned to the truck and grabbed the radio. Anderson Farm to incoming C-17. Strips lit and as clear as it's going to get. Surface is wet, but holding. Winds from the southwest at 25 knots. Static. Then copy. Anderson Farm. This is Ghost Rider 425. Starting approach. ETA 5 minutes. That voice. Aged. Deeper. But unmistakably David Keller. Tom hadn't known he missed it. Not until now. More lives will be lost if those supplies don't arrive in time, the colonel answered firmly. Captain Keller is set on this. He just needs your help. Can you illuminate the runway? Tom closed his eyes. 2 decades had passed since he last saw David. 2 decades since he made a dying woman a promise that her boy would get a future. "I'll light it," he said eventually. "But you tell David, if he trashes my granddad's strip, I'll never forgive him." Rain slashed sideways by the time Tom donned his raincoat. The wind pushed hard as he dragged the LED runway lights from the barn. Ones he'd only ever used for the rare nighttime hobbyist. Never in his wildest dreams had he imagined lighting the way for a hulking military cargo plane. Scout whined from the porch while Tom drove stakes into the saturated earth, marking the runway edges with determination. His truck's headlights cut through the downpour, giving him just enough light to finish. He was drenched despite the waterproof gear. Back in his cab, Tom grabbed the radio. Anderson Farm to inbound C-17. Runways lit. Best I can do. Surface is wet, but solid. Winds southwest at 25 knots. Only static at first. Then, copy that, Anderson Farm. This is Ghost Rider 425, commencing approach. ETA, 5 minutes. That voice, deeper, older, but without question, David Keller's. Tom hadn't realized how much he'd missed that sound. He parked his truck at the strip's northwest edge, headlights adding their glow. The rain lightened a little, but strong gusts still shook the trees. He climbed out, straining to pierce the night with his eyes. Then he heard it. A roar, far deeper than any crop duster or private plane he'd hosted before. 4 turbofan engines straining against the wind. Piercing through the cloud cover came the aircraft's landing lights, slicing beams through sheets of rain. The silhouette of the C-17 emerged. Massive, too big to believe. "Too fast," Tom muttered. "He's coming in too damn fast." It looked suicidal, but just as the monstrous jet approached the makeshift threshold, it flared, flaps fully extended, speed bleeding fast, defying every rule of common sense. Its rear wheels kissed down exactly where Tom had marked. Twin geysers of water exploded upward. Then came the reverse thrusters, screaming defiance at inertia. The aircraft tore down the narrow strip at alarming speed. 3/4 in, the nose gear touched down. Tom's lungs locked up. They were running out of real estate. Beyond the runway, a drainage ditch, then his soybeans. 200 feet from the edge, the aircraft slowed to a crawl, then, mercifully, stopped. Tom stood still, soaked, stunned. That shouldn't have worked. It shouldn't have even been attempted. His radio hissed. Anderson Farm? Ghost Rider 425 down safe. Appreciate the help, Tom. A pause. Still keeping that strip pristine, I see. Tom finally found air. You damn near stopped my heart, David. Craziest damn landing I've ever seen. A chuckle over the radio. Learned from the best, didn't I? Tom climbed into his truck and rolled toward the beast of a machine now squatting on his strip. The sheer size of it dwarfed everything. The rear ramp lowered, and Air Force personnel hustled through the rain with purpose. Then he saw him. A tall figure stepped forward in a flight suit, shoulders broad, hair cropped short, confidence in every step. But to Tom, he was still that scrawny teen with eyes full of sky. Tom Anderson, David said, beaming as he extended a hand. Bet you never thought you'd see a C-17 on this old runway? Tom gripped his hand tightly. Bet you never thought you'd be crazy enough to put one here. You're looking good, David. You too, sir. We need to offload quick. That equipment's headed to Lexington. Tom nodded. You'll want the barn. It's dry, got space, and maybe some terrible coffee. David laughed. Wouldn't be Anderson Farm without it. For the next hour, they worked side by side hauling specialized medical cargo, ECMO machines, David explained. Life-saving tech for critical care patients. How long you grounded? Tom asked as they stacked crates. Until the storm clears. And until I figure out how the hell I'm getting a fully loaded C-17 off a 3,200-foot dirt strip. Tom raised an eyebrow. Easy coming down, huh? David grinned. Let's just say it'll be harder going up. Midnight came. The cargo was tarped and ready. The rain still fell, but less fierce. Inside, hot coffee steamed in old mugs. Airmen warmed up at the kitchen table. Tom and David sat in the corner, catching up on 20 years. So a C-17 pilot, huh? Your mom would be proud. David's smile faded a little. Think about her every time I fly. Think about you, too. What you did for us. Anyone would have helped. No, David said softly. Not everyone teaches a broke 16-year-old to fly. Not everyone writes an Academy Rec letter. Tom shrugged. You had talent. Best natural flyer I ever saw. David's gaze swept the kitchen. The farm's smaller than I remember. It is, Tom admitted. Had to sell off the east section. Heartland's been buying up the county. David frowned. How bad is it? Tom sighed. 6 months till foreclosure if nothing changes. I can't keep up with their machines. Their money. David looked at him with intensity. But the runway, still perfect. Granddad haunt me if I let it go. Pilots still need it. Sometimes. The first pink hints of dawn crept in through the rain. David glanced outside. Weather's breaking. Transport trucks will be here soon. Tom nodded slowly. What about takeoff? Strip's wetter now. David's tone turned serious. That's what I need to talk to you about. We've run the numbers. Even unloaded, it'll be tight. We need every inch. And maybe a bit more. Tom frowned. More? If we could flatten some of your field past the ditch, we could get a safety buffer. Tom stared. That's my crop. David nodded. Just about an acre. I know it's a lot to ask, but the Air Force will compensate you. Before Tom could answer, headlights flickered down the driveway. The trucks had arrived. The trucks rumbled into the driveway, headlights slicing through the lingering rain. David met Tom's gaze. We've got everything ready. We just need a place to stage it until the convoy loads up. Tom nodded toward the barn. Plenty of space in there. You can also help yourself to that terrible coffee I still haven't figured out how to make. Despite the weather and tension, David smiled. Wouldn't expect anything else. For the next hour, Tom worked alongside the airmen, unloading crates of medical equipment. ECMO machines, David explained. Advanced gear for critical patients at the University Hospital in Lexington. How long will you be grounded? Tom asked, hefting a case. David sighed. Until the weather breaks. And until I figure out how to lift a C-17 off a 3,200-foot dirt runway. Coming down was tough enough. Tom lifted an eyebrow. You call that the easy part? David chuckled. Compared to takeoff? Yeah. By midnight, the equipment was staged and tarped in the barn, awaiting the arrival of the transport trucks. Rain still fell steadily, but the worst had passed. Inside the house, airmen clustered around the kitchen table, warming their hands on mismatched mugs. Tom poured coffee that was still terrible, but welcome. David joined him in the corner, where time seemed to slow as they caught up on 20 lost years. So, a C-17 pilot, Tom mused. Your mom would have been proud. David's expression grew soft. I think about her every time I'm in the air, and I think about you. What you did for us after she got sick. Anyone would have stepped up. No, David said, voice low. Not everyone teaches a broke 16-year-old to fly. Not everyone writes a letter to the academy for a kid with no prospects. Tom shrugged. You had the touch. Best natural pilot I've seen. David looked around at the worn linoleum, the outdated cabinets. The farm looks smaller than I remember. That's because it is, Tom admitted. Had to sell off the east section last year. Corporate outfits are buying everything around here. Heartland Agricultural? David asked. Tom nodded grimly. They've got deep pockets. Can't match them, not with this equipment, not with this land. David leaned in. How bad is it? Tom looked down at his calloused hands. I've got about 6 months left before the bank takes what's left. Can't keep up with their kind of scale. But you've kept the runway immaculate, David said. Tom smiled faintly. Granddad would haunt me if I let it go. And every now and then, a pilot still needs a place to land. Dawn began to brighten the eastern sky. David glanced out the window. Weather's lifting. Trucks should be pulling in soon. Tom followed his gaze. What about takeoff? That field's soft now, and you're going to be pushing it. David nodded slowly. That's what I wanted to talk to you about. We've done the math. Even unloaded, the margin's razor thin. We'll need every inch. And maybe a little more. Tom's brow furrowed. What do you mean? If we could flatten a bit of the field beyond your drainage ditch, we'd get the safety margin we need. You're talking about plowing under my soybeans. Just about an acre, David said gently. I know it's asking a lot. The Air Force will cover the loss. Tom didn't have time to respond. The sound of diesel engines broke the silence. The trucks had arrived. Military personnel began organizing the transfer of equipment, moving with precision despite the muddy ground. Within the hour, every crate was loaded, secured, and the convoy pulled away toward Lexington. Soon after, a staff vehicle rolled up the drive. A man stepped out with stars on his shoulders. General Frank Roberts. Mr. Anderson, he said, extending a hand. General Roberts, Air Mobility Command. Got a moment? Tom wiped his hands on his jeans. Always. Coffee's hot, though not good. They sat at the same kitchen table where so many conversations had unfolded that night. I've read the report on Captain Keller's landing, the general began. What he did here was exceptional, but I'm more interested in the landing strip itself. Tom remained silent, waiting. We've identified a coverage gap in our emergency landing network, Roberts continued. Captain Keller's success showed this strip has strategic potential, even for large aircraft. It was a close thing, Tom admitted. David's a gifted pilot? No doubt. But what brought me here is the Strip. We'd like to officially designate it as an emergency landing facility. That would include surfacing improvements, lighting, and a maintenance agreement. Tom raised an eyebrow. General, I appreciate that, but I might not have the land much longer. I'm on the brink of foreclosure. The general nodded. Captain Keller told us that's part of the proposal. The lease agreement and facility fee would more than cover your financial issues. You'd retain ownership. We'd lease just the runway and adjacent space. Tom blinked. You're serious? Absolutely. Your location is vital, and it would also prevent development that might interfere with future use, like, say, Heartland buying the rest of your land. Tom leaned back, breath catching. You're saying this would protect the whole farm? The general smiled. Exactly. How much of my field would you need to clear? Tom asked. Approximately an acre, David replied. We'd need to fill part of the drainage ditch and level the field beyond it, for safety. Tom looked out over the soybeans he'd planted just a few weeks prior. In a good season, that acre could mean the difference between foreclosure and one more month. But deep down, he knew he was losing the farm either way. Do what you need to do, he said at last. Within the hour, Air Force engineers arrived with equipment. Tom stood silently as they efficiently filled the drainage ditch and flattened the selected portion of his grandfather's field, extending the makeshift runway. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, but the ground was thick and heavy. Word traveled fast. Cars lined the narrow road bordering Tom's land. Neighbors stood outside, many holding up phones to capture the historic scene. Tom spotted familiar faces, people who'd watched him battle this land and its finances for years. He even saw Mark Davis, the man from the bank. David finished his final checks and boarded the aircraft. The ground crew sealed the cargo ramp. Engines spun up to a deafening roar that drowned out everything else. Tom stood near Colonel Mitchell, watching as the giant aircraft rolled slowly into position, nose pointed at the very end of the strip. He's really going to try this, Tom muttered. Captain Keller requested this mission specifically, the colonel said, his voice low. Said he owed someone a debt. Before Tom could respond, the engines reached full throttle. The C-17 began to roll. It moved slowly at first, tires grinding against the wet earth. Then momentum built. The aircraft charged forward, faster and faster. The dirt held, barely. Halfway down, the jet had yet to lift. 3/4 in, still grounded. Tom's hands clenched. Come on, David, he whispered. Come on. The end of the original runway loomed. The plane struck the newly leveled section. For a moment, it seemed like they'd run out of time. But then, the nose lifted. A beat later, the massive body followed, rising just above the soybean crop, clearing the edge by feet, maybe inches. Cheers erupted from the gathered crowd as the jet climbed, arching toward Louisville. Tom exhaled, only then realizing he'd been holding his breath. Hell of a takeoff, Colonel Mitchell said quietly. The noise died down. Onlookers, many still wide-eyed, approached Tom. Some shook his hand, others clapped him on the back. Never thought I'd see anything like that, said George Willis, who ran the farm supply store. Your grandfather would have been proud, someone else said. Even Mark Davis stepped forward. That was something else, Tom. Something else entirely. 3 days later, Tom was repairing the south fence when a convoy of SUVs pulled into the driveway. Scout barked until Tom calmed him. From the lead vehicle emerged a man in dress blues, stars on his collar. Mr. Anderson, he called. I'm General Frank Roberts, Air Mobility Command. Mind if we talk? Tom set his tools aside. Always time for coffee. They sat once more in the weathered kitchen. I reviewed the report, the general said. Captain Keller's landing was remarkable, but what's even more remarkable is your airstrip. Tom waited, unsure where this was headed. Our analysts have pinpointed your location as a major gap in our regional emergency network, Roberts continued. The success of that operation proved this field's value, even for our largest craft. It was touch and go, Tom said. That plane barely made it. And yet it did, because your runway was there. That's why I'm here. We'd like to formally designate it as an auxiliary landing facility. Tom sat back, brow raised. That mean upgraded surfaces, better lighting, maintenance support, Roberts went on. And, of course, a long-term lease agreement with the Air Force. Lease?